in the purpose. And I think that is something that change everything. When we are online on virtual settings, we get tired far more. We disconnect. We are not focused exactly, because this also brings a lot of fatigue, and it's super different from when you interact with other people. The experience is completely different, and reason why the data is also more questionable.
When it comes to doing this virtually and facilitating virtually, what are some common mistakes you see people that normally start doing this for the first time? What do you see them doing that's that could be easily corrected, or that could be something that they could curb right away? Like, I'll put out one out there. It's just not taking 15 minutes at least, or a half an hour to kind of prepare for what's to come, looking over the agenda, looking over the boards, making sure everything's right. That kind of quick Q&A check really helps for a session, especially if you're a facilitator. That would be my number one, or at least it's in the top 3 or top 4. Jason, what are your thoughts? What would you say to people that are brand new to virtual designs for facilitation in terms of this space? What are some best practices or some things you recommend for people that are just starting out?
For facilitators?
Correct.
Preparation is everything, especially in the remote space. If you do not properly prepare, and I know that there's 2 really camps of thought on this. I know that some people like to go in completely cold because you feel like you're unbiasing a lot of the feedback that you're going to receive. I am a part of the other camp where I think preparation is key. The reason for this, in my opinion, is that as a facilitator, you don't want to have to worry about what you're trying to achieve. Well, the objectives, you don't want to worry about the process per se. You want the process to kind of take care of itself. You really want to be, again, back to those soft skills. You want to be, your feelers need to be up. You need to be actively engaged and participating, and really making sure that the group is achieving the objectives that you originally sought out to achieve. And I don't think you can do that if you're worried about, is this exercise going to achieve its objective? Is this person over here doing this thing and you're trying to wrangle all this stuff and trying to make sure that the process is working right? I just think there's so many plates as a facilitator that you need to spin. I think being completely prepared. I do something called seeding the workshop, right? So in our pre-sprint week, we're doing reconnaissance, we're collecting information, and then we're using that information as a part of the workshop, so that when people get into the workshop, they contextually understand each exercise, and they can see the feedback that they provided in the week prior expressed in a lot of these exercises. And I think that just makes your job a lot easier as a facilitator, and it increases your confidence moving through each of those exercises, so you don't have to worry about it.
How about you, America? What's one thing you would recommend for people that are starting this for the first time?
I think preparation is really critical. I'm feeling that right now. And I think having a full understanding of what comes next, what is the session, and at the same time having the global perspective of what is your contribution in that day. I think that is critical, super critical. Also, guiding the team. You need a lot of soft skills. You need to have like a serving attitude. I don't know if this is the right perspective, but you need to have a very solid background of soft skills, because I think that will change dramatically the outcome of a design sprint. That giving you have to prepare, at the same time provide a lot of information that puts the team in context of what we are doing and why we are doing. In preparation is everything. I would say that if you prepare, you are very good. You will be already a reasonable facilitator, having preparation. If you have a serving mind, you are available to your team. That is, I will say that that's all.
So I have a follow-up to this for each of you. For Americo, you first, what's the thing that you're currently working on that you're trying to improve when it comes to facilitation? Something you don't feel comfortable with yet, but you're trying to get better at.
I think I always need to work, improve, experiment that serving attitude. I think that is the point I need to improve, because, and also I have a difficulty to articulate in English what goes on my mind, and all that makes it more complex to me. But I think attitude is something you always need to work. Despite Jason is great, he has a great attitude towards the group, like was Ming in my last edition, and like Mehmet. Well, these guys work facilitation 24/7, and they already are experienced in developing these kind of soft skills. And for me, I'm still working on that.
Okay. Jason, what about you?
Repeat the question one more time. Sorry. I forgot. I told you about blunt force trauma.
Maybe yours can be active listening. I'm not sure. No. Yeah. What's the one thing that you think? What's the one thing you think you feel that you personally could improve on?
You know, I think for me, it's getting folks to stop talking and to move on to the next thing, right? It's hard to judge when that cutoff point occurs. A lot of times during these, you know, we embrace this concept, right, of together alone and note and vote and trying to reduce conversations, but inevitably conversations happen, and they can be really rich conversations, especially within GVDS, when we're exploring really complex socioeconomic topics. I think that can happen quite often. It's really hard to get people to stop talking and moving on. One tactic that I really, really love, and when I employ it, it has produced great dividends, is asking for permission. A lot of times, I think as a facilitator, a really simple thing that you can do, especially for new facilitators, is just to ask for permission up front. So when you're kicking off a workshop, just saying, hey, as a facilitator, I have to keep things moving, and I need permission from all of you that if I need to cut the conversation short for whatever reason, because we're running short on time or we just need to move on to the next exercise, I need permission from all of you as a team that it's okay for me to do that. Once that's done, and I oftentimes, it's such a simple little thing, but I oftentimes forget to do it. And it makes cutting people off so much harder. Once you do it, it's like, as a facilitator, at least for me, the weight has been lifted off my shoulders. And I feel like I have permission then to just butt in and say, you know what, we're done talking about this conversation or about this particular topic. We're going to move on and get things moving. So a simple little technique that I often forget that I need to get better at, because a lot of times when rich conversation is happening, you don't want to, it's a good conversation. You don't want to cut it off, and it's a really hard thing to do. So I need to get better at that sometimes.
Yeah. I often, for me, it's the thing if I were to think the one thing I'm working on is I know too much. I know way too much. And that's not being ego talking. That's just, I have so much previous experience with how things flow that it's really hard not to kind of go, well, just let me steer for you. Here, this is what you do. Here's here's the steering wheel. This is the pedal. This is how you turn on the radio. You put your hand out the window. It's really, it was terrible in GVDS 2 and 3 because it's not that I didn't trust people. It was that I wanted to make sure that they were experiencing what I intended them to experience, and not the fumbling, kind of struggling, you know, am I doing this right? Not doing this right? That is necessary for people to learn. And I've had to really take that back. And even today I was with Team Bunyan today, and there's a couple people that are doing first time facilitation, and I can sense where there was that ball of confusion that starts coming into play, where people aren't quite clear about what to do, and either it's because I don't write good instruction, or it's just that there's an unfamiliarity with what's next, or it's just the style of somebody that they're being, that the way that they're speaking. There's this, it's a very bad habit I have. I would say habit, but a twitch, where I'm very execution and Q&A driven. So I'm like, okay, I see the path forward. So I just want to go, okay, let's go. And I got to pull back from that, because to your point, and Nora Scully is somebody that illustrates this really very well. She's someone that can do both really introspective and interesting questions and observations, at the same time can lead the entire team down a conversation where, as long as they're okay with it as a collective, they will burn their online time through pretty fast to exchange all those points of view. Yeah. So what I found is that normally when those conversations occur, it's okay. And people recognize the fact that they're a little behind, but they're willing to kind of go the extra mile to kind of make up for whatever time was lost, because that was an enriching and enlightening conversation that had happened.
Yeah, I think I could definitely relate to that. I have a tendency to run my mouth, and I need to know when to be quiet and let the process happen.
Yeah,
it's a great point.
So I want to turn the tables a little bit. So it's not just me asking both of you questions. What I'd like to do is have the both of you ask each other, or ask the rest of us. So Americo, you ask me and Jason, or Jason, you ask me and Americo, a question that you'd like to ask in relation to a situation that you've experienced recently with facilitation, something that you're wondering about in terms of process, and kind of go from there. So Americo, I started with Jason last time, so I'll start with you. What kind of questions would you like to ask me and Jason in regards to facilitation and what you're experiencing in the GVDS?
I would say that my biggest challenge will be, how do you have people trusting the process? Because I think many people is not trusting, especially the dash, and I'm not sure. Facilitator is very important when people also when people seems to not trust the process, and try to change the process in consideration to a faster goal, or in consideration for their own beliefs. How can we give them? How can we tell them that they have to trust the process?
Jason, you want to answer that?
Tough one. I would say, it's a really hard one to handle, especially from a facilitation standpoint, right? Because they don't trust the process. You're not going to get the right amount of feedback from it. Some things that I think might work in those instances is just to have some type of social contract, right, with the group, and just say, hey, the dash is a new thing. We're going to try it. Our goal here is to experiment and fail fast and fail forward. And that we are all going to remain engaged, and maybe as a facilitator, one thing to do that could increase trust is to kind of be vulnerable, and through each exercise maybe ask the group, how was that exercise? What did you like about it? What did you didn't like about it? And really actively be engaged in that conversation, and say, we're going to spend the next minute talking about what we gained out of it, what we liked about it. And maybe that will create some forward momentum that will help increase trust throughout the exercises. But it's a tough one. It's really hard. Yeah. Oh, Robert, what do you think?
So there's group dynamics in play. So it depends on how the message is delivered. If you get the message in session, whereas people are kind of, you can tell that the line of questioning tends to be more about kicking the tires and wondering why we're going down the first place. There's two ways to do it. that I've done personally. One is, in that instance, I usually apologize. I go, okay, I usually take accountability first and foremost to say, like, maybe this wasn't clear. And if this past 3 days have been any instance, especially with the dash, I've had to rewrite whole sections just like I did the first time around in the spring, because the more people consume it, the more I have to make sure that it's understandable by more people, and just their perspectives and how they consume information. So I take it upon me. But if we're talking about something like the design sprint and a virtual design sprint, and there's a set recipe, and then there's like a stretch, I have some rationale as to why I'm doing it. I'm not just doing it for the sake of experimentation, like the fact that no one's doing a map right now. There's a reason why. But I haven't broadcasted it because I don't want to start fights in the middle of like an event. But it's a grand experiment. So in session, it's okay, noted, probably could have done this better, go that route, or ask the question, get a little more feedback, get some follow-up questions, but table it to 5 minutes. And then if it seems like it's going to go a little bit past that, say, okay, at this point, it's like, let the process run its course. Let's you and me or other people have a conversation offline about this, so I can understand from your perspective what's going on. And then you just it usually takes 50 minutes to a half an hour. But the key thing about that is that you're willing to understand and you're willing to listen to the other person.
Right.
I mean, Americo, the one thing I really appreciate about you, and I think I've told you about this, is that you're no holds barred when it comes to feedback. You literally say, call a spade a spade. You're very black and white about certain things, but I love it because I don't mind it. You're basically saying, okay, this doesn't work, this works, this doesn't work. You're pretty clear. So those kinds of emails are things that I save and referred back to when I'm going back to process and re-engineering it. So that really helps. If you get the request in email, if you get it offline, then there's a conversation that's being had without you there, right? So there's someone that will send an email, but there's probably a side conversation that happened previous to that. So now you have a different situation where it's going to be more about the collective and taking the questions that were posed in that email. And what I tend to do is go back in Slack in a section called Advice and Q&A, and I post the question without any context of who the person is, and I answer it in that fashion. And sometimes I'll make a LinkedIn post out of it if I've spent some time putting some feedback into it. But I make sure that the conversation is first and foremost with the person. Then I strip out any kind of personality behind or identifiable information from the person, and then I make it a more of a community conversation, because it may be that this person is telling me, yeah, there's something that's more to it, like more people think this now that I've actually said it. So those are the two ways. In person is just taking accountability for something you may have missed. The second is just kind of hearing them out for 5 minutes and tabling it. And then offline is addressing the issues as best you can. And if there's opportunity to teach or to share, you broadcast that in some sort of post so that you're showcasing your thinking, as well as kind of answering the question for other people that may be wondering the same thing.
Very good.
Jason, well, how about you? What's a question you've got?
So I had a question. Now I'm not sure I want to ask it of you, because of what you just said. Well, just because I was going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Please do. I love that.
Well, I will pose it in a slightly different way so you don't have to reveal some of your controversial moves for this GVDS, as far as removing the map and things like that. So
yes,
how have you seen, how have you and you've been experimenting with new ways of design sprinting and workshopping over the past year, and I've obviously closely followed some of the things that you've been experimenting with. And just in general, how have you seen the evolution of the design sprint, and kind of where do you see it going?
I've written and said this before, that I think it's going to start being consumed into an overall design framework that people have. They'll go, oh, that's design sprint like, or that comes from the design sprint. But the entire make of how people go about doing their work, both at work and personally, will be piecemeal from different places, because there's just so much content, so much approaches to different things, that something for its time in the design sprint was revolutionary because so many people were siloed in what they were doing, and they couldn't bridge those conversations with other people in other organizations about the work they were doing in the product development lifecycle. So it had its moment, and it was exclusive enough that McKinsey did its own version of it very early with the strategy sprints. There were tons of marketing agencies that were adopting it very early. In fact, there were people that were doing design sprints even before the book came out. And in some way, shape, there were service sprints and other things. So fast forward to today, and I think that the process is personalized for the organization, and it uses what makes sense for the culture. In terms of people adopting it for the first time now, I think it's more educational to be aware that there's a different way of doing things. But the applied version of what's there right now, no. I don't think. I think if you try to set up shop or try to post like, if you just do this process, it's going to be amazing. You may get some play, but now I'm starting to see some things that people are doing that are design sprint like, but have their own flavor and their own like appeal. Like, for example, Americo was actively talking about with some other people about strategy sprints or some makeshift where you're actually using this process to look at high level strategy and how that would work. My DASH process is basically the fusion of two different camps of design thinking and prototyping, trying to put a kind of like a chocolate covered wrapper around a walnut so that when you eat it, it still tastes good, but you still have to kind of chew on the hard facts that maybe walnuts aren't for you. Hopefully you don't have a nut allergy by that. But to answer your question, I would say by 2021, I think it's still going to have its advocates. But I think as more time goes on, someone's going to come out with something that's going to go, oh, this actually does this thing interestingly well, given the tech, given everything else. Because I think that it's just the natural progression of things. We aren't still all doing user-centered design. We aren't still all doing the framework for older ways of doing things because we have new blueprints and people talk about them, write about them, and so on. So I think it's just going to evolve. My own approach is that I'm evolving with it. So I openly question why certain things are done, because sometimes when you do design sprints so much, you just go, oh, this is just what we do. Yeah, but do you actually step back if you're not a design sprinter and see what the actual outcome, the actual reaction to it is, how it's adopted? Do people talk about it later? That's the kind of conversation, the cultural conversation around the process that I key in on or try to. And that kind of brings around the changes that I think should happen with the process. What is causing cognitive headwinds? What tends to frustrate people more often than not? Is it the instruction or is it the process? Could the process be changed or tweaked slightly so that frustration is gone? And how much of that is me? So it's a never-ending conversation, but it's where I like to play.
Well, I think you brought up a really great point that I think goes really understated when you're doing these types of workshops, is that the cultural impact is can be you're in a really unique moment where the cultural impact can be pretty profound, and can have a lot of downstream implications, from C-level executive culture change, just thinking about product in a different way. Yes, it's a process. Yes, you go through that process. Yes, the benefits of it is all these efficiencies and the outputs that are generated, and people tend to key in on those things. But I think your point about the cultural impact can be pretty profound. And I think, to your point, I think there needs to be a lot more focus on those types of things, because I think design in general, while it's gotten a bigger foothold on a lot of organizations, it still faces a lot of headwinds from a cultural perspective. And I think design sprints are a good kind of, if I use this term, a good gateway drug into getting people to think more in a design product focused way. And I think that has a lot of really positive implications that enterprise organizations can really benefit from.
It's almost like you're a clothes tailor. They have to like you first. They have to like your shop, the way it looks like, the smell of it, the look of it, everything else. So if they're bought on you, then that's the crucial first step. So if they're all about Jason Root or they like Americo Alves, you could be selling like snake oil, and they'll trust you to a certain extent. But to your point, what you do is that you kind of showcase, okay, here's what I sense that you're going through. Here's seems like where the pain is, and this is where what the outcome you'd like. Here's where we could probably go with things. And it may be a design sprint, it may not be a design sprint, but it keys in somebody to your thinking, your approach, and you do it by proving it out. And some of the stuff that you shared before about problem framing that's diametrically different with the layovers was really interesting because it blended two of those things. I had never seen that before. And the person inside me, the professor was the professional was like going, now that's an interesting approach to it. But it only occurred because I knew what you were all about and how comprehensive and knowledgeable you were about the space. So it starts with kind of like you, and then what you kind of showcase in how you approach the problem solving process. So,
Yeah, the workshop
and what your reputation is outside of that.
Well, I appreciate that, but I think at the end of the day, it's all about storytelling, right? And especially when you're selling design up the chain of command and you're trying to get things out into the market fast, is can you sell an effective story? And all of everything that we produce tells a story in some way, whether verbally or non-verbally. And I think our workshop construct helps assemble a good story to be told. And I think that's an area where product design or just UX or UI, whatever you know, if you're in the innovation space, I think that's something that people really struggle with, and I think it's a downfall of a lot of really great projects and products, is because you just don't tell a compelling story.
Yeah, Americo, what have you been thinking as we've been talking?
Well, I fully agree with with your perspectives. I think the format is more hybrid. It's just a name because I think business needs adaptation of the process to their needs and their contexts. I think that is one step. Despite the label design sprint will continue to sell very well. I think we need to adapt it to each circumstance and each context. So that was about the format, the culture. I think companies are moving to gain skills in everything, not exactly in consulting service. I think they want to empower their own teams so they can hone the process, either discovery, validation, whatever. I think that is a big step or a trend that will become stronger as the economy, as the business progress. And these was the two issues you spoke, and I fully agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from either both of you about like virtual sprinting, GVDS, anything in particular? Something you want to bring up? You want to put me on blast? You want to like tell me that I'm doing well? I mean, what's on your mind?
Americo, you want to go?
The skin is very tough, even though it seems pliable.
What's on my mind? I think in GVDS, I think people is short in time. I think people is very short in time nowadays, and they are not having the time to prepare. I think that is impacting a lot. At least in my teams, we are not having the preparation and having the global perspective to share with the team, so we know where we are and our endpoint. I think that there is also people is not exactly aware of the process, especially the dash. Having a full understanding of the journey is critical, and it leads people to change things, and that as a price at the end of the journey. I also think that you should deliver templates earlier, not in the day.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
I'm sorry to tell you that, but I think that preparation is also in jeopardy when you deliver your templates so early in the day of the session.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree with you. I'm again, there always seems to be every event, there's something that falls short, and that's one of them. There are two reasons. One of which is I'll tell you that there's things happening in the house that just basically blew up last week, and it just monopolized all the time I had reserved for kind of getting all that stuff done. So I literally had to take this week to be up till 5 in the morning on some nights to get all that stuff prepared. But you're correct. I could have spent disproportionately greater amount of time getting those things done. So that's on me. The good news is that I'm continuing to tweak this format so that if I use it again, I'm not going to be recreating them wholesale. So there'll be less time to kind of spend with this. So yeah, that was a misstep on my part. By the way, Jason, that's why I love Americo. Is that he doesn't
Oh
cuss
yeah.
words at all. So it's like I should just have he should just be my coach and just be like, okay, Americo, what did you see this week? And he goes, yeah, okay, yeah, you did this wrong. You didn't do this. Oh, geez, and I did this. I don't. So
I will say that.
the
I will
what's
say
that?
that one thing that you have very good is that you are very open to discuss things in open context.
Mhm.
And I think that that is uh, that is priceless, and that is what makes you unique.
Yeah, well, thank you. But I'm a conflict seeker. I love it. It's the best understanding I could possibly have, and to be able to understand whether or not the input I'm getting makes sense. And I knew that when you were going to say templates, I was like, yeah, that's right. that's no doubt about that. I didn't get that right. Okay. The other thing about time and committed time. So if you've been showing the progression over the GVDS, there has been like, oh, you can schedule your time, and then as the events have been going on, saying you need to kind of commit some time. Then this last one for GVDS 5 was, this is the actual schedule you need to commit to, right? So it was getting more declared. And I think it's going to go even a step further in that in order for you to register, you have to be active for these particular dates. And they're going to expand a bit. Like they're going to expand, like you're going to have 3 hours of dedicated time on a particular day of the week. And you're going to have this committed time as well. I understand that things come up. We've had some issues with people in terms of sickness, work, and everything else that are going to come up. That's going to be a natural thing. That's unavoidable. But I think it's going to go down the road of being so, okay, to qualify for this. This is not just something that you just do and say like la di da. It's an event. It's the fine balance between making that commitment and the price point, which influences that. So if people are going to basically say, well, I have if it costs me $100 and that's easily throwawayable for me and I don't need to make the commitment, then it's going to be problematic for myself and the people on your team. If it's something where you dive out at the last minute because of you're not sure about commitments, then that's that situation. You just have to be empathetic for it. But I'm getting closer to saying, look, this is the structure that seems to work with this. Yes, you are paying a fee to actually do work, but the thing is you're actually creating something that you're going to take with you in terms of understanding process, going through the motions, being able to understand what this is all about. So it's applied learning. And if you take other institutions in terms of how they do the exact same thing, it's not as robust. It's a one-man show for now. But for on par for what I'm trying to offer here in terms of value, I am asking for the time commitment, but I think I need to be again a bit more explicit in terms of how that actually translates. And that's on me to communicate it well and active. So registration is one thing, and here's all the things that you get from it. But in order for this to work, you have to really look at your calendar and say, do I have 3 hours one week, 15 hours another week, and then the offline time that goes along with it in relation to all the other offline commitments I have, family, work, and other things. Because it is one of those things that's unique, but it requires that time to work together.
People have to take a week of vacation.
Yeah.
Yes, but I don't want to necessarily interfere with work, because then I get in the problem of like conflicting with things that are just necessary, that where I'm starting to ride into something. I've had people that have had to ask permission to kind of get in this event from their workplace because of the way it's been structured. So the next one will likely be, here's the scenario, and it will be pretty concrete so that these are the dates that everyone's getting together. I'm going to have time slots like that are just going to be like midnight to 2 a.m. my time, they'll probably be like, and I'm going to take what people have put in the last kind of survey and say, like, there's 9 to 11, there's 11 to 1, something where it's bracketed and it's really known way in advance. And this is how it generally flows from activities and offline activities. So taking the information from the configurator and broadcasting that, here's the current way of doing it. Here's how it's different for, say, like number 6. And then taking in the feedback from people during retrospectives and say, this is how we're going to change it up a bit based on what happened the last time. So that should get closer to hammering home that commitment, because in 4, it was a big problem. 5, not so much, but it's still there.
Well, go ahead, Marco.
No, in my virtual design sprint, we have 2 persons whose bosses are terrible. They schedule the time for the VDS, and their boss say, well, you have to work an extra hour to close the shop. And well, that is complex.
Yes.
Yeah.
They,
well, I go ahead.
They have to take a week of vacation. That's my conclusion.
Well, I will say, Robert, on your behalf, having been a part of GVDS since 2, I think that every year it gets better and better and better. And I think this year, with having those time slots laid out from a facilitator, you know, or someone who's been co-facilitating, that is an incredible stress relief, that everybody's kind of agreed to all those things up front. You're not coordinating schedules. You're not trying to wrangle people across the globe to participate. It's just, it is what it is. It's set, and everybody agrees to it or they don't. But I think that every year I've seen improvements in not only the timing and scheduling, but opportunity, the way things are structured. It just gets better and better each year, and that's what I like to experience about it. Also, obviously, meeting everybody new, learning new things, having great conversations with folks. Even just yesterday, someone who didn't have a whole lot of experience with design sprints, and we were going through the map exercise and during problem framing, which I didn't know that we removed it in the template, but that's okay. It was a great exercise. And we got through it, and someone had been talking about jobs to be done and how they've experimented with that as part of the map, and it was like light bulbs were going off, like, yeah, I never thought about doing it in that way. And that's something now that I want to experiment with, that I hadn't even thought of before. So these little epiphanies that happen through GVDS happen all the time, and it's one of the reasons why I really, really enjoy working with this such diverse group of individuals, and you have made that a possibility. So thank you, and thank you for the continued improvement and such a great experience.
Well, you're welcome. And there's a thought I had around that kind of connection around fusing different processes. So what was absent this time around, that was an inception idea that just didn't have any time to put in, is before the GVDS happens, you get people that are senior to this event. So arguably you, Jerome, other people, and invite them in and see what's going on in terms of like what they're experimenting with, and seeing if something like what they're doing can be incorporated as an option for a team. So if you wanted to do JTBD and map, that's, say, it's its own mural. It's kind of like its own contained thing. And then you have that as like the optional components that you can slot in instead of doing the traditional one. You have, if you want to do the map, you can have, it's going to be 3 hours. So it'll be 1 hour. You could do this. So you can do this, or here's the alternative that Jason Root, Jerome Fermau, Sabrina Gorich, like all the people that basically are kind of like up here when it comes to kind of doing this thing. It's a marketing promotion for them, but it also helps teams that want to try something different do that. And that holds closer to the promise of modularization or trying something different with this process.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
America, what were you going to say?
I think it. Sorry, I think it's a valid option. I think it's a good opportunity for them to build something that is relevant for them, and that may bring more open more opportunities and more understandings of of their challenge. I think that's good for them, and I think that is good for those who choose to take part of it, because people like me, like Jason, like Jeroen, Mehmet, that people really, really knows about the business, really knows about that, and the learnings are massive. I'm having, I'm learning a lot with Mehmet, how he approached the group dynamic. For instance, I'm learning a lot with him, and he's the one who speaks less in the group. I can tell.
He needs to write a book someday.
Yeah,
He's kind of that in depth, where he's got that intelligence aspect of him, where he kind of thinks through things. He has applied knowledge. It just seems like there's something that could be written that codifies a lot of his approach to facilitation beyond just like a Medium article. So just a thought there. If ever watches this
I'm
thing.
learning a lot with him. With Ming, I learned a lot about attitude, because that guy is like a diplomat, you know.
Yeah.
He's really great. That guy has an attitude that is awesome. uh, and well, there are other people. I didn't have the opportunity to work with many, but that people are really stars and really good in facilitation and design sprints, and I think it's good for them, and it's good for those who take part, who will learn with their experience.
Yeah, one of the things I'm thinking about doing with this event is that after it's said and done, I'm going to take the month of December to do some prototyping on it. So I'm going to basically jimmy up some ideas and then float them out there and just see how people react to them. I won't necessarily, the thing I'm not going to do, and it's very dangerous to do, is to try to monetize communities overtly, because you kill them. I'm thinking just in general, like for people that are cold, that have never heard about GVDS before, or even this community, seeing what would appeal to them in different aspects, like flirting with service design, which I think is this underlying process that doesn't get a lot of play, that because it's really, really complex in some areas, but I think it could have some appeal. A facilitator challenge, where everyone is whoever's their facilitator and wants to understand how they're perceived by an audience, can basically get into a system where they get some feedback from their facilitation, where they are with things, what they can improve on. And it could be a mix of people that are brand new, never heard of it, to people like us that are that know the space. And where I just had a vision of, like, the TV show The Voice, where people go in and they basically compete. Like America could be that particular panel, Simon Cowell. So you start out your criticism in like your native language, and then you need to go in English, and you just go, "You're not speaking clearly." So I know it's kind of like that. It'll be rapid fire experimentation and seeing if there's any market play to it, and then letting it kind of simmer and set, and then seeing how it evolves from December to January to either February or March, depending when the next one is, so that I have some rationale in terms of like saying, okay, here's something we're adding to the event that's a little bit different.
There's another thing that you should do, because I'm feeling that in this edition, that is when you team up with people who knows everything. There is a lot of frustrations that you don't feel, like having an all-stars event, or for people like Laura Jill, like Mehmet, like all those people that are nominated, and that were that were part of the Spotlight Awards.
Mm-hmm.
Having that people having the sensation of having one event where it's only stars. Like, you don't need that is the context where you can have a sprint without having a word, without speaking a word, because everyone knows the process, everyone trusts the process, everyone just give the best in the consideration of the ideation and the outcome. Just a suggestion.
It would be interesting, but I My wonder is like, how am I going to appeal to someone like Jason Rood, who's got a family, his workplace, his holidays, and everything else? What for him would be worth his time and something that moves the needle for him professionally? So that's always the question that I have. Is like I want to respect Jason's time, and I appreciate when he's part of this event. But if I get him involved in something you're describing, and especially with you two, I want to be able to know that if we do this, that we go through the motions, go through the process, and then the end result is something where you go, that was time well spent, or that's something that really mattered. That's the equation that I'm trying to strike, or that's what I'm trying to explore. So I'm all for an all-star cast of trying to do that. But at the core, it's like, okay, I'm not just going to ask 60 minutes of their time and we're all going to zoom it out. It's like, what is going to be the dynamic that kind of like plays at this? And just, is it, how do we showcase how good Americo is, like how good you are or how good Jason is? That's the kind of thing that runs through my head. It's like, how do I want to showcase them professionally that it makes people more aware of what Jason does and what he's all about outside of like Hitachi and other places? What does he want to be known for? How do I further his professional reputation? How do I take someone like Americo, who I know has these abilities that I've experienced, and manifest them in a way that helps further himself along professionally and what people know about him? Because the offline conversation that happens about you is just as important for your professional brand as it is when we're having this conversation. So that's where my focus is at, because that's why I like to do. I like to be able to kind of see where those things go.
All right, just prototype it.
Yeah.
Don't presume, prototype it.
Yeah. There's been a thought around. Go ahead.
I'd be for it. I was just to say I'd be for it. I come to GVDS to learn from others and to learn those little tips and techniques that can have a profound impact on how I do my business. And you know, again, back to Mehmet. You know, I was on a team with Mehmet last year, and there was something about expert interviews that it was a small little tweak, and I hadn't considered it before. And now I've changed the way that I do my design sprints within my company because of that little tweak. Those are the types of things that I really get excited about and gaining from talking to others in the field that are just as passionate as I am. So if you can get a group of those people together and I can increase my epiphany level, that's a big win for me. And I don't know if everybody else feels the same, and maybe they have different versions of what success looks like to them, but I think it's something that we can definitely explore.
I agree. Just had to figure out what that's going to look like. So
yeah, for sure.
Okay, gentlemen, we are at the top of the hour. We are at time. So this is the first session of the Q&A for the GVDS and facilitators. I enjoyed it. How do you think that went?
It was fun.
Intimate. Yeah. Despite this is broadcast, it's just 3 people.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for it. I love doing it because it's the perspective I love to hear. So you two have a good rest of the day. Maybe we'll see you tomorrow or even Friday. We'll do our mega giant networking retrospective event of truth and justice and see where that goes. So cool. Until then, thank you both for coming here and having a conversation. For YouTube and anybody else watching, take care. See you later.
Take care.
Adios.
All right. See you, everybody. All right. Bye.
Bye.